Short and sweet, city folk come at the farmer. I grew up on a dairy struggling every day 365 to help my family live. About 10 years in the farmer's land next to us has a single house built onto a small plot near the irrigation riser, and a younger family from the city moves in for a quiet life in the country. Over the next year the cops are at our place a dozen times about smell complaints, noise complaints, work started at 5 a.m., tractors and all, and other complaints about anything this family could think of, basically trying to get us shut down for existing outside the bounds of their imagined country life. In the winter, my dad would drive our tractor around to all the neighbors' houses on our mile and dig the snow out of their driveways so they could drive to work, a costly and time-consuming endeavor, but one of the main things a farmer can do to gain praise and feel good every day. Well, about 3 weeks into winter this guy from the new house shows up at our door asking us to not do his driveway so early in the morning because it was waking him up. My dad explained he had to do it at 5 a.m. because he did it before he started the other chores that took hours. The neighbor insisted he do it later, or not at all. That was the last time my dad did his drive. Turns out, you have to wake up about 5 a.m. to use your snowblower to dig out your own car if you want to get to work on time. Reminds me of a friend who had a new neighbor move in. This guy had never lived out in the country before, and in a few days came over to complain that my friend's birds were in his yard and she needed to come and get them. These were wild birds, not escaped chickens or anything like that, and their houses were about a quarter mile apart. A family of Karens moved in next to your dairy operation. I think most people with an ounce of common sense knows a working farm starts before dawn. I have never lived in rural places, but it seems to be common knowledge this person lacks. It's like people who move next to the airport then complain about the noise. Glad to see he's learning all about how community develops in rural areas. When I lived in the country I had some friends visit and they told their children to not get dirty. Yeah. Grass. Dirt. Straw. Chickens. A few goats and sheep. Kids are gonna get dirty. I love being woken up by the snow removal company's tractor. It means I can fall back asleep comfortably knowing that I can get out of the driveway. So, even after they called the cops on you for no reason multiple times, your father still cleared the driveway when it snowed. Your father is a much nicer person than I am. Screw that guy. After the first couple of his complaints, I would not have pissed on that guy if he was on fire. And yet your dad went out of his way to be helpful regardless. A beer and a tip of my hat to your dad. The term you're looking for is cityots. Why do people move to the country for country living, and then complain about it? The cops should bill the neighbor for wasting their time and ignore his stupid complaints. I must be odd, but I like farm smells. The hay fever utterly brutalized me though, so dang it. Can't move out there. People who move to an area need to accept what they're moving into as far as setting goes. Don't like planes? Don't move next to an airport. Same shit. Tangentially related, but I live a hair south of the 49th parallel. Had some neighbors move here from the southern border of Arizona. They complained about the rain. They complained about the cold. They complained about how dark it got in the winter. And they moved away in 9 months. That's like a new subdivision was built within a mile of a dairy farm near us. The new residents complained about the smell, the tractors and equipment on the road, and the sounds coming from the farm. The farmer put up with the complaints, phone calls, honking horns, etc. for 3 years before he finally gave in to pressure and falling prices. His family had had that dairy for over 200 years, but progress killed it. A retirement home is on that land now. My wife grew up in the country. I grew up in the city. We now live in the city, noise, sirens, traffic, light pollution, and all. I long to live in the country. She says she will never go back. Less than sigh. This is a real problem for more rural states. People are abandoning the sinking ship that is California because of the restrictive laws and insane tax rates. The problem is they are going to areas that have low populations and are trying to change the laws there to be more like California. There are so many people moving to these areas that they are getting the votes to change the laws. Non-farm country person here. Yeah, I'm not happy when the farm due north of me starts bringing in manure to fertilize the field during the winter and that smell hits for a week or two, but ain't nothing I can, or will do, but whine about it. It's worse when the wind blows across one of the feedlots, anyway. Now, the small airport that was built after we bought the house and the biplanes buzz our house on Saturday mornings. That I will complain about. I'm a city person through and through, but I wouldn't be moving out to the country then trying to tell people how to live. That's a specific kind of ignorance. We've had an influx of new people in our area. It's been interesting, we get to help them see that they're wrong. How long did the city slickers last in that house? Lol. Yeah, best solution on the newcomers would have been to offer to help front the costs to move the pump. 12 calls to the police, if anything that thing's getting a straight pipe lol. This reminds me of a recent article one read in the local paper where a couple from the city recently moved into the country. Just down the road from a gravel pit. The article was them complaining about the dust when the trucks went by. Added bonus, most of the roads up here are gravel but for the highways. I just don't get people. So absolutely beautiful. Also your father is a much better person than I, being a petty and vindictive bitch. I would have crossed him off the list of people I help out in any way save direct and imminent danger to their lives, way before that first winter came, so Mr. Whiny City Douche 3 wouldn't have had a reason for that last complaint at all. P. Haha, looks good on him. Your dad is a good dude for cleaning his driveway for him. They'll learn, or they'll leave. What police in farm country are going to respond to a call about foul smells? I'm surprised your dad dug him out at all, after all that harassment. What idiot builds directly next to a dairy farm and then complains about smell? Reasons like this is why I don't live in the country. Y'all get up and start long before I want to, and I'm not fond of being that far out. This is unrelated. Was it a family-worked farm or did you hire hands that weren't family? Meanwhile, where I live I get calls now and then that my chickens decided the bugs were better in their yard than mine. Usually they just want me to know in case I am looking for a missing chicken, or they want to let their dog out and don't want it to kill my chickens. Otherwise they are happy to let the little velociraptors eat bugs in their yard. I have an opposite situation on my dirt road in the middle of nowhere in upstate NY. Everyone loves the third-generation dairy farmers, and us, the NYC people with the country escape house. Everyone hates the guy from Long Island who built a big house with a red roof on the ridge, because he's a belligerent drunk, who plays techno from 2000 W event speakers down the entire valley all weekend long, and put flashing colored light bars on his roofline to spoil the starry skies. There's no noise ordinance in our rural town, so there's nothing we all can do. I got a phone call to hear a complaint that the bellringers were ruining their Sunday morning enjoyment of their garden. My response: they built that bell tower in 1530, your house was built in the 80s. We have first dibs. And I wanted to end with, and you should be in church before the bells stop ringing. Sounds like Wisconsin. The old Bowman Dairy on Fish Hatchery Road outside Madison shut down in the 1980s for exactly this reason. New neighbors fleeing the city complaining about farm stuff. What a tool bag. Can't stand people who move somewhere new and then try to force it to either A. be like it was where they came from, or B. make it what they thought it would be. Your dad was a mensch for doing the neighbor's drive at all. I would have done all the rest and left his alone from day one. Sounds like the idiots in my old area. Although in LA City, fairly rural edge with horse property all over. Some of the houses sold to new people who then started to complain about the horses. Who were there first? They tried to get one stable shut down that had been there for about 40 years and found out that not only was the zoning permanent but that 2 council members boarded their horses there, so that went nowhere. I never understand why people knowingly moved to a place where they saw horses all over but didn't want horses there. Don't have the link handy, but there's a web page explaining rural life to urbanites. It called Code of the West. Just chased it down. Edit. Added link. A city story. Raleigh, North Carolina became a growing spot for the building of high-rise apartment buildings and condos. The joke was when those people found out that the trains run through Raleigh at all hours of the day and night, and are required by law to blow the horn at all intersections. And it is loud. If someone wants to wake me up by digging out my driveway, not only will I get dressed to go outside and say thank you, I will probably come by with a plate of cookies in the next day or two to say thank you. My country driveway takes forever to snowblow. That reminds me, I need to get the snowblower into the shop to get it running and tuned up before the snow starts flying. Bravo. Reminds me of bartending in NYC in a slightly different way. I worked in a bar that had been there almost 15 years in the Les, so obviously it was loud and rowdy until 4 a.m. most nights. New neighbors moved in above us and called the cops frequently. Like, what did you expect, dude? Edit. Spelling. Why do city people move to the country and then expect country life to change to suit their needs? A little tip for anyone who is thinking about moving to the country. Farming noise and smells are part of country living. If you don't like it, stay where you are. Reminds me of the local racetrack here in northwest Indiana. Was there for years, urban sprawl surrounded it, and the inevitable complaints rolled in. One day the owner had a forum there, the public and local news there to cover them trying to reach a solution. At one point, an upset woman stood up at her turn and said, "I don't understand why you people always build stuff like this in our neighborhood." The owner stood up, pointed over to a large aerial photo hanging on the wall of his racetrack surrounded by forest and said, "I'm very sorry ma'am, could you point out which tree you live in? I would have loved to been there right then. I hate shoveling snow. You can show up at 3 a.m. with a marching band and I'd accept it as a trade-off for keeping my driveway and road clear." Ugh, this reminds me of people who move into apartments near pubs and nightclubs and then submit complaints, as if somehow they couldn't predict it would be a problem. There is at least one county in Maryland that now has a "smells like farms" disclaimer that you have to sign when you buy a house. Where I live, someone bought a house next to the town church, which rings its bells on the quarter between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. He tried to get the council to make the church stop it, claiming he never knew about the bell ringing. Council asked him just exactly how long he viewed the house before buying it. His attempt to silence the town fell flat on its face. We had the neighbors that complained about flies and got upset when the state health department laughed at them. I live in the exurbs of a major U.S. city. We're mostly small towns surrounded by farmland, with McMansions ever so slowly starting to infill. My neighbor behind me, whose family has owned the property for better than a century, has an on-site firearms repair business and shooting range. Like clockwork, every time someone from the city buys a house out this way, the next time my neighbor is test firing something the cops get called. Hilarious. A couple nearby just moved to the county. Well, this spring the turtles are on the move to breed and lay eggs. They got online with a picture of a wild turtle asking who lost their pet. Tears of joy, tears of joy, tears of joy, tears of joy. I wonder how much more of this kind of thing is going on now because of COVID and people escaping the city. Where I used to live it was like X, this place should be like that too. I saw it a lot growing up on the coast of Maine. Rich folks would move in and discover the amenities they were used to didn't exist. They'd cause a big row at planning board meetings trying to get their way and, unfortunately mostly they did. Now the town I grew up in is a little plastic suburb with no character. Time to build a pig pen and get into the bacon business with an industrial-sized smoking house too. Get them accustomed to the more potent smells available.